Welcome to Empowered by AI, the podcast for women entrepreneurs ready to harness AI to take their businesses to the next level. I'm your host, Michelle Muncie Silva, founder of Innovative AI Studios. You may have left corporate life to start this entrepreneurial journey, but you don't have to go it alone. Here, you'll find a supportive community of like-minded women and an invaluable thought partner each week, as my guests and I share actionable insights you can use right away. So let's dive in together. So, Tara, I really want to know what inspired you to create not only Do That Dave, but just your whole persona and your whole way of being with AI, because you are really focused on AI education. Can you tell me a little bit about your background, what led you to it?
Yeah. So before I launched Do That Dave about a year ago now, I had a consulting firm that was doing a lot of work with advising on instructional design, developing curriculum materials, both for e-learning and in-person or virtual learning. And we were primarily working with clients in the cannabis industry, actually. One of our main client was a place called Oaksterdam University, and they build themselves as the world's first cannabis college. And they really started as an advocacy organization for in favor of legalization for medical cannabis. And so what they did is they took people the science side of things, like the horticulture side of things, but then as it became more and more legal here in the US and they started having licensed businesses and whatnot, they started to move more into teaching the business side of owning a cannabis business, running one, because it's very different. There's a ton of regulation. And also, it was just a totally new emerging field that people didn't really know a lot about. So there was this huge need for education, which kind of sounds really familiar. I feel like that's where we're at right now with AI. It's actually been around for a long time. But it's new to a lot of people and people are really uncomfortable with it. And, a lot of people are really outright resistant to it. And I think part of it is because of the way it's being presented to people right now. I feel like big tech is really focused on just, they're not bringing people along for the ride, they're dragging people along behind them, as they tend to do. I think in the big tech world, move fast, break stuff. That's their whole motto. Right? But there's a real need here for, because this tool is really, it is unlike any other I think we've seen in our lifetime, just in how accessible it is. Anyone really can use these tools. If you can have a conversation, if you can ask a question, you can use AI. But it goes, if you want to use it effectively and responsibly, you need to know a little bit more. And so that's really what inspired me to launch Do That Dave. Really just making a space where people can learn how these tools work and what they can actually do, and more importantly, what they can't do, I think is something that I wasn't seeing a lot of at the time. At least for beginners, for people who really hadn't used the tool. It seems like everyone really is people who are teaching about AI and training people how to use AI, they're really getting pretty far ahead of their audiences, I think, in a lot of respects. It's because that's what they're interested in, the latest, greatest new thing. They're really excited about it. They want to share it. They want to teach it. But there's still this need to introduce people to it.
Mm.
It's not true. Like, where I'm guilty, of course, of being inside the AI bubble where we
Mhm.
believe that everybody uses AI all the time for everything.
Yep.
Simply not true, even here in the US, but especially globally. And there's a lot of parts of the world that there's at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
of this journey that we're on. And I want to help them discover this tool and explore what it can do, and but teach them like the fundamentals in an approachable way. So you
Yeah.
don't have to be technical to get it.
Yeah. And I'm really curious. Do That Dave is a pretty unique name. So I'm assuming there's a story behind, and I want to know a little bit about that story and then how you see it empowering professionals and entrepreneurs, as you said, with no technical background.
Yeah, it's funny about I think about half of people ask me about the name and the other half just really don't want to get into it. So I'm glad you asked.
I need to know.
It's a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey, which of course is a great film by Stanley Kubrick that was adapted from a novel by Arthur C. Clarke. And the story is that this part of the story is that there's this crew of astronauts. They're traveling through space on a ship that's captive. It's run by artificial intelligence. There's a computer named HAL 9000. And they're out there on their mission of exploration, and all of a sudden, HAL 9000 goes rogue. That's the classic horror story trope of AI, right?
Yeah.
It's AI starts killing the crew, who wants to kill everybody on it, and has been mostly successful in doing so. And finally gets down to the last crew member, and he's stuck outside the spaceship trying to get back in to shut down Hal. And he says, "Open the pod bay doors, Hal." And Hal responds, I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. That astronaut's name. Oh, that's a long for a very short name, but really, I love that film, and I feel like I'm named my company after it in all due respect, because really the theme of that movie is, I honestly, the themes of that movie are too much for this company. That's go away from it. Is people don't actually have to be afraid of these tools if they know how they work and what they're doing, and if they can stay in control of them. So instead of, I can't do that, Dave, it's, yes, you can do that, Dave.
I love it. Stay inside the spaceship, though.
Just, or stay in
Yeah.
control of your AI tools, and hopefully we can continue to do that. But they do keep getting smarter and smarter every day.
But I do like that message, is that if you are taking smaller bites, manageable chunks, you're going to be able to control your usage, right? I think that's a little bit more aligned in that you're controlling your access to it and customizing it to what you need. So I appreciate that. That's a really cool story. I like it.
Oh, well, thanks.
So in light of that customization, your platform offers self-paced missions, right? And we're gonna stay with this. I love this, right? It's AI training, but it's these smaller chunks, these self-paced missions, if you will. Can you explain how those are designed and the benefits of that approach?
Yeah, it's really, we designed them because I was out there seeing education in this space being a lot of very one-way communications. It's a lot of video lectures, webinars, sitting down where people are passive and passively absorbing the information instead of actually walking through how to use them
Mm.
and actually do something with them. So the name also has a little bit of a double meaning here, in that all of our curriculum, it revolves around getting people to do things with AI, not just read about it, hear about it. There's a big, I think the classic line right now is to tell people to just play around with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they're trying to learn a new AI tool or learn how to use it, that's the advice they'll get from a lot of people. Yeah, I've had CEOs of AI companies when I asked them point blank, do you have an example of a project I could do that would show me the capabilities of your tool? And they just say, just play around with it. And that's great for early adopters and people who are inclined to learn that way, but not everybody does. Not everybody's going to be able to sit down in front of a blank screen and see that blinking cursor on the chatbot and be able to think of something that they could even try. I think there's a lot of folks who just treating it like it's a magic 8 ball. Like, it's going to question and shake it up. And then they get the answer and they're like, well, that was cool, but what now? How
Yeah.
do we actually take this and turn it into something that's going to make it easier or better or faster to do what we're already doing every day?
Yeah.
So some of the missions we have are really about core AI literacy topics, like how does this technology work? Um, what can it, what are the risks? What are the limitations? Talking through those issues. But the whole time, we're also teaching people how to use the tool, use AI tools to find some of these answers. But we're doing it in a way where it's not just letting people loose on it. It's very guided. It's very step by step. Ask it this first. And then when you get that answer, ask it this next. And it seems like such a simple way of teaching people, but I think you'd be surprised how just because it comes naturally to some of us to have that dialogue, like iterative prompting and build on the answers you're getting and be skeptical and be dubious, that's still a skill and it takes practice to get there. So that's what we try to offer with every one of our, and we do call them missions.
Mm-hmm.
We were leading into the space theme a little bit.
No, of course. And you actually have an offering called Future Product Playground. And tell me about that and how it helps people understand and apply.
Yeah, that's my favorite course.
Oh, I love it.
Your product playground. And it is maybe geared for a little more toward more advanced users, intermediate users who do have some kind of basic experience with prompting an AI model. But I created it because I wanted to build this fun, creative way for people to try out AI tools in a really low pressure environment. So what we do is we walk people through the entire process of coming up with an idea for a product of the future, something that might come out 10 years from now, 50 years from now, or even 100 years from now. We use AI to come up with all these wild ideas for future products. Some of it gets very sci-fi really fast. And so then we pick one and we take it all the way through the process of getting that product ready to launch, this imaginary product. So we'll use AI to write a business plan, and then we use it to create a pitch deck. And then we even create a product landing page that's published. And if you want, you don't have to. You can take it all the way to the point of being ready to publish a page and launch your product on social media. And we just go through every step of that and how to use AI to help you do that. And it's just, it's a fun way to experiment. And I think that's what's missing a lot, especially, with businesses and organizations that are trying to implement AI.
Mm-hmm.
They really want to get right to the return on investment really fast on AI tools and prove that they're worth the money, and not taking the time to give people the space and the support they need to experiment, try things out, get used to it. All the things that ideally is going to help people find their way and actually be excited about using these tools instead of just feeling like another chore.
Yeah, and what a fun way to do it.
Yeah, we've come up with I've gone through it several times now. I find it fascinating. And the things that some of our students have come up with are just so imaginative. And it's just amazing to see how fast you can get, how far you can get, and how fast.
Yeah.
None of it's perfect, of course, and that's not really what we're going for. It's not, okay, let's write a business plan and now let's really work on it for a while. No, we did a business plan. That was cool. You see how that worked. Let's move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Nothing, because we're not doing it for real. It doesn't have to be perfect, so there's no pressure.
But that low stakes is where you begin to work out the kinks, right? That's because AI often feels so intimidating. It's, oh, the company has a new tool that I need to use, or I have this new tool that I need to use. That's a ton of pressure because I need to use this and I need to be already perfect at it because I need to see a return. Whereas you're flipping it on its head and removing the intimidation by introducing this productive play, but it's not frivolous in any way, shape, or form, because they might actually be moving forward with product development. But what a blessing to have it be low stakes as you play around with it.
Yeah, I hope so. That's definitely the environment we're trying to go for, is just play around with it and also be creative. I think there's a big rush towards like automation too, and trying to increase efficiency or boost productivity with these AI tools. And of course they can do that. But if you focus too hard on that, you miss these opportunities to actually imagine things that you didn't really think were possible. You do things that you didn't never even imagined before.
And how do you, as a platform, kind of boost the inclusivity, accessibility? Because we do have people from varied backgrounds as they're walking into this. We have people, particularly for underserved communities, which I know you're familiar with, individuals from all different levels of experience. How do you help support that diversity?
I think number one is always just have to assume that your learners are coming in with nothing. And actually, that's the best sometimes if they don't come in with any preconceived notions or biases or anything like that. But really, you can't take anything for granted in terms of the skill sets that they're bringing in, the knowledge they're bringing in, and just really focus on explaining everything and keeping it simple. I think there's some tendency right now that, AI and training space to make things seem really complicated, because then it seems like it's the real value to buy education in that. So they come up with these big prompting frameworks and all these prompt engineering make sound fancy type tips and techniques, when really it doesn't have to be that way. It can. And there are certain, of course, applications where you need to do prompt engineering. If you're making agents, automated systems, you really got to think through everything in that prompt, like that you're feeding to the AI, and have it be control. But if you're really just experimenting, just simple back and forth language, learning how to talk to the model like you would talk to a coworker or an assistant or your boss, just being yourself a little bit in the AI model, I think is the best approach. So I like to think that's a little more welcoming than you have to learn 10 different acronyms for various prompting frameworks just to even get started. That's not true.
Yeah. And can you share a success story for maybe feedback from learners who've applied these new AI skills?
Yes. I've been working with a student who recently went back to law school.
Mm-hmm.
She had been an entrepreneur, wanted to go back later in life, and was just really feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of reading and summarizing and note taking and all that goes along with that process. And it's an interesting environment too, because they're definitely legal educators are definitely grappling with these questions right now too. Like, how far should we be? Should we even be encouraging law
Mhm.
students to use AI for research or for writing? So that was an interesting challenge of like, how do you make sure, how, first of all, how do you deal with this huge volume of information
Mhm.
he was having to process like on a weekly basis? Because there's only so much you can put into an AI tool. If they've got a context window, there's a limit on how hard you can push them, at least right now. That was interesting, trying to pick the right tool that would be able to handle all that information and distill it down in that format she needed it in. She was really just trying to build some study guides, not even something that she was trying to use to do any of the writing or legal writing or anything. Something that she was trying to accomplish. She really just wanted to be able to create an outline and a study guide that could help her get prepared for her exams. And
Mhm.
I think that's one of the biggest use cases that really gives people that aha moment is synthesizing information, summarizing,
Mhm.
because we're just everybody. It doesn't really matter what your career is. Everybody's drowning in information and content, right?
That is so true.
There's so much, and you just can never get through it all. And so I think that's really when you see, oh, I really want to read this latest report from McKinsey, but it's 200 pages. I'm never going to get to it. I read the one paragraph of the executive summary, and then I had to stop to go answer 10 emails. So you can put that in there. And first of all, you can ask it about the document.
Mhm.
First of all, and if depending on what tool you're using, sometimes the AI model knows about you and what your interests are. So you can even ask it just a question like, do you think there's anything in here that I'd be interested in? And
Mhm.
it'll give you a meaningful response. And you'll still have to go and check all that out for yourself. Eventually, if you do find something that's interesting, you want to make sure and verify that what AI is telling you about what's in there is actually in there. But it's a good way to just try to tame that the deluge, the constant deluge of
Mhm.
they're just
Of information.
words, text, numbers, all of it.
Yeah. And I found that to actually, you bring up a really good point. I found it to be a really good addition to any prompt that whatever I'm asking it to summarize for me must be true. And while I don't want it to quote necessarily the reading that I've attached, I should be able to find what they're telling me in the reading. Because, and I say they so loosely, I've anthropomorphized it, but it's a people pleaser first and foremost, right? So adding that qualifying parameter, like I want this to be true, that should trump your desire to make me happy and give me what you think I want because I need this to be accurate. So I have actually started including that anytime I'm asking it to summarize something or condense this into a manageable chunk. It's like I have to add that parameter because I remember somebody telling me it just wants to make you happy. That's its first and foremost goal is to make you satisfied with a response. And so oh, that's not what I want from it at all. I don't want it to make me happy in this moment. I want it to accurately satisfy my request. So yeah, once I realized I had to add that to the prompt, it's like my go-to thing, right?
That's a
Please
good
be
one.
true.
It is, and also too, it's so another good one to add that I like to put in my prompts is it's okay to be harsh in your criticism. It's okay to be critical of what I'm saying and giving it so because it does want to please you. It doesn't. If you give it a piece of writing that you dropped in, get what do you think? It's gonna if you don't tell it anything else, it's gonna say this is wonderful, and it's gonna do more of a compliment sandwich. Oh, this is wonderful. Here's a few things that you need to work on, and then another compliment. But really great job anyway. No, that's you go ahead and be a really harsh critic. Actually, it's funny. I wrote just for fun, of course, because why not? I wrote a screenplay. I used it to help me with a lot of that, which I know is a big no, but I'm not. And don't worry, I'm not gonna ever have this film made in anything. I was just experimenting, but so I gave it a copy of the final draft, and I asked ChatGPT to give me a coverage. So that's actually like a thing they do in Hollywood where they get assigned numbers to a 1 to 10 scale on very different points like plot, story, character development, this, that, and the other thing. And so I fed to ChatGPT the first time, and gosh, based on this coverage, it looks like I've got a blockbuster on my hands. I'm sorry. Oh, sure. That's my ticket out here. 7, 8, 9 on character development. This is incredible. Nicholas Page will. I know. It's like Scorsese will direct. But then I asked it again. I gave it to it again. And I was like, okay, now be a harsh critic. And boy, did my numbers plummet. What
Interesting.
way down into, and it was pretty. And then the thing is, like everything that it is critical about went through each point. I'm like, yep, the story does drag through the middle there. Yep, this character is one dimensional. Yep, this is like everything it was saying was spot on, but I had to ask it to do that.
Yeah.
But there are some tools that are better than others, and that'll have a lot to do with the internal settings, things like temperature and weights, all that real techie stuff that I know about, but really in terms of how free the model is to be creative versus how free how more inclined to accuracy in its responses. I think definitely like the new tools coming out from Google, the ones that are really focused on research, they've got the temperature turned way down because they're trying to avoid as many hallucinations as possible. But hallucinations is part of the design of generative AI. It is a bug, but it's really a feature because that's what allows this ability to hallucinate is what allows generative AI to come up with novel responses. If it were all programmed down to the exact steps and the exact logic and it had a predetermined answer, that's not generative AI, that's just programming. That's just software if you know what the outcome is going to be exactly. So the fact that it can hallucinate, as we call it, or come up with pick answers that aren't as probable as some others is it's really part of what makes it's not magic, but that's what kind of makes the magic those other things. But you can't write it out altogether either.
That's one of the best things that I've right. But that to me, that's one of the best things about it is that I can think on my own. Obviously, I've got my own ability to question myself critically. I've got the ability to walk away from something and then come back with a critical eye. I can do that, but I am only ever bringing myself to the table. And for a solo entrepreneur, you really benefit from having someone that will come up with a novel or creative response to what you're looking at. So to me, I recognize my own intelligence in the game. I don't want to ever remove it. But at the same time, I want that novel response because I wouldn't have thought of it, obviously. It's what makes it novel, right? I'm not going to be bringing the same data set to the table. I couldn't possibly. I don't have the kind of exposure that an AI tool like ChatGPT has had. So, do you see that there are some examples that really benefit an entrepreneur? Some tasks that your courses might help them to streamline or enhance?
Yeah, I think like what you're getting at, you don't want you want a different voice
Mhm,
that as an entrepreneur.
mhm.
You've got yourself all day, every day, and it's like you've got so really you'll
For
get
better or worse.
yes, what you can really a really great use case for entrepreneurs with AI is help with advice and decision making. I use it for decision making personally quite a lot because yeah, when you're just one person or even if you've got a small team, you just it's hard to decide. Like decisions at least for me, I know maybe some people can just roll right up and just be really confident that they made the right choice every time, but I feel like that's pretty rare. So having that other second opinion is so helpful. Advice is it, it it avoids the problems that are associated with things like hallucinations because, you know, advice is something you always have to take with a grain of salt anyway. If if you were to ask a human to give you some guidance, they would have imperfect information. They'd only have your rundown or your side of what the issue is. They'd make their best effort, but it's, they're not going to spend a ton of time like, all analyzing your problem and doing all this stuff. They're going to be like, based on what you've told me about this, and based on what I know, here's what I would do. And then you still have to sit there as the decision maker and decide for yourself whether that's good advice or not. But even then, seeing that second opinion can help you clarify your own thinking, right?
Mhm,
Or you see something, you're like, oh, I don't like that right away. And then in your gut, okay, not that. Or
mhm.
you see something, you're like, yep, that's exactly what I was thinking. So there's a little bit of confirmation bias there that might be reinforcing. It's as long as you're, again, keeping in control of the situation and making sure you're the final decision maker and not the AI, it should
Mhm.
be, it's not that much different, I don't think. So
Yeah.
I actually do have one of our mini courses is about business decisions called Make Business Decisions. I like to name my courses after exactly what happens in them, exactly what you'll do with them.
I like it.
And we'll walk through things like, because AI can really do some amazing stuff with the type of analysis you always want to do, but
Mhm.
maybe don't have time for. Things like actually setting up a decision matrix. So that's one of the tasks we do in the Make Business Decisions course is how do you set up? You can you give it some information and it comes up with some matrix. And then, of course, you're supposed to go through as the human and assign all the scores and weights that you're supposed to do with that tool. But maybe you don't have time to do that either. It can get you started. Like, I definitely had to pressure ChatGPT to give me like an actual, completed decision matrix with all
Oh,
like
interesting.
score for it. It's in a lot to it first. Oh, you should really do that for your business best. You need to do this research. It really didn't want to. I was like, maybe you could just give me some examples of what it might look like. And then it's like, yeah, here you go. It's all filled in, like different and it calculated like final scores for each of the two options I was considering. That was really, yeah, it was a funny moment. But there's other stuff you can do too. Stacked ranking. I know that's not got a negative connotation to it sometimes, just because it's used a lot in HR for layoff decisions and stuff like that. making it still, it can be used in a lot of other ways. And just really any kind of framework that you would ordinarily use
Mm-hmm.
is something that these models know how to do and can get you really a long ways towards getting them done, which
Mm-hmm.
is always better than just doing no analysis. Usually,
Yeah.
usually doing some analysis of a decision is better than making no analysis.
Exactly. Exactly. Getting that novel response. Exactly. What kind of other projects do you have going on? What initiatives are you working on? What's next for you?
So we really do, now that we've got the self-paced missions up and running, we really want to start doing more live workshops and do a live cohort of some of these courses, particularly the Future Product Playground. We're planning to launch that with our first cohort next year and do it as a hybrid model. The learner spends some time doing the self-paced coursework that's in the Future Product Playground mission, but then they come to the workshop and meet with their peers to go over what they've done and talk about it and talk about what went well for them, what didn't go well for them, how it might apply to what they're really doing. And having that space to talk about it and discuss it is really what people need, is what I see people doing in informal communities, groups on LinkedIn or various professional groups. They're just trying to put together this kind of ad hoc space, programming or space for people to talk about this stuff. And people really need each other to see what other people are doing and learn from what other people are doing right now. We definitely, but at the same time, then I think having the self-paced coursework ahead of time makes that in-person time so much more effective. It's really hard to get people together, even online, even on Zoom. It's hard to get a group of people to convene because everybody's got busy schedules. Everybody's got so much going on. So you really want to make the most of that time when you do get people together. You don't want to spend a lot of time going over the basics. Doing stuff could have been, it's a meeting, but it could have been an email type stuff where you can put at a time and come to the workshop already with things to, you've got a common language, common definitions, you an work output you can share and compare, and just not be spending that time on stuff. It's not the best use of in-person time. So
Yeah.
and I think there's actually there's a new trend in higher ed too that I've heard about. They're calling it the reverse lecture. You actually, the professors will record their lecture and students watch it before class, and then they come in and they're ready to do a discussion or to break out into groups and do some writing exercises or thinking thought exercises or practical type experiences, instead of just, we could have, if all we're going to do is listen to this lecture, we could have done that before we got here and then been ready to just dive right in. So I think that's the best approach in my experience. Building educational programs is always what I recommend. And I think especially too for businesses and organizations who are looking to train their workforce, I think you definitely don't want to be wasting any in-person classroom time on the basics, because it's expensive and it's just
Right. Show up ready to go.
you're ready. When it's time for the in-person workshop, you be ready.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Tara, if somebody wants to connect with you, where are they going to go? Are we going to just go to Do That Dave and connect with you that way?
Yeah, dothatdave.com is where you can find all of our self-paced courses. And you can contact me on LinkedIn, Tara Bonhorst. I'm the only one on LinkedIn. And if there is anybody who's interested in joining one of the live cohorts, I definitely love to hear from them personally. Really would be really excited to have a wide mix of people come and join and be part of that experience. Yeah.
That does sound like it's going to be amazing. I agree with you. I think community is huge. And if you can build that through people going through a shared experience, then it's absolutely priceless. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. That was so fun.
Thank you for tuning in to Empowered by AI. If today's episode sparked ideas, don't wait. Follow the link in the show notes to visit innovativeaistudio.com and download your free resource, created to help you put today's insights into practice. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes packed with more tips, tools, and inspiring stories. Until next time, stay empowered and keep innovating.